It's gonna really suck if we gotta go remote for a series, but I don't like all those numbers that are skyrocketing.
It sounds like Jim. That sound like you talking? Where's that coming from? You're not talking. Could be anybody. Yeah, that's the delay. Yeah, we gotta cut the feed to that screen.
We got somebody backing it.
It's ourselves from back to the future. Yeah, we got No.
We'll just wait until we hear from them. Or just add it.
All right, we have everybody. I think Ira's gonna be trying to come back in too.
Yeah, he's right now.
All right, welcome back. All right, we're going to welcome everybody back to the board meeting here. We're going to jump into our next agenda item. We have some commendations to go over. The first is our Harold Dutton Spotlight Award. Harold Dutton was a longtime employee at Olean High School. He was hardworking, upbeat, caring, and a very personable individual who made everyone feel welcome in the school. Students are nominated for this award when they demonstrate these same characteristics by doing the right thing, modeling good character, or striving to do well in school. The Harold Dutton Spotlight Award nominees for September and October are Alex McFall, Baby Lola Singletary, Bianca Simmons, Reese Schreiber, Ethan Washington, Jared Morgan, Sarah Emerton, John Eric Vosberg, Alyssa Metz, Talon Stitt, Kenley Spears, Matt Mosier, Devin Kays, Garrett Meerdink, Brennan Keeler, Evan Snyder, Lily Todd, Emily Duncan, Haley Covert, Madison Cleveland, Gavin Weisman, Madison Herner, Samantha Morgan, and Dixon Yang. Congratulations to those students. Next, we want to say congratulations to the high school students that participated in the November 4th Model UN Conference at Canisius College. Model United Nations team competed against 15 other Buffalo area high schools at a conference hosted by Canisius College on November 4th. All students participating represented OHS admirably. Delegates to the conference were Emma Anastasia, Naomi Hill, Alex Vogel, Tyler Camp, Haley Zaleski, Rita Animalesetti, Dylan DeRosa, Rose Scordo, Lily Ketry, Nate Martinelli, and Emma Dwaliby. Students who participated and also won awards in their committees were Chance Padlow, Hartley Phipps, who were recognized as the best delegates in Contemporary Security Council. Milo Mandel earned the Outstanding Delegate designation in the Human Rights Council. David Ruskowski and Garen Jones were acknowledged with an honorable mention in the Historic Security Council. Congratulations to all those students. That's quite a list. Also, congratulations go out to the girls volleyball team who are the Section B1 champions. And we'll be moving on to play again tomorrow in the regional tournament. Also, I saw in the paper today that the Cattaraugus County Youth Bureau Youth of the Week is Olean's own Ruth Scordo. So congratulations to her on that as well.
Oh, nice job. Great.
All right, no communications. We're going to move on to discussion items. Out of respect for the fact that the auditors have traveled down here, I would like to go ahead and get the audit presentation finished and then they can be excused. Luke, welcome and thank you.
Good evening. I'll try to keep it brief. I know you have a busy night ahead of you. My name is Luke Malecki. I am the partner with Treasurer Malecki. I served as the engagement partner on your external audit for this year. We did meet with the audit committee on September 16th and subsequently filed the reports with their district clerk in early October. Purpose of this presentation is to give you a brief overview of the findings of our audit, the results of our audit, and make myself available for any questions you might have. You see the presentation on the board, and I'll jump right in. Foremost, the products of our audit. We are the external auditors, as I explained. So our main role is to determine whether or not your financial statements fairly present the district's financial position and the financial activities for the year ended June 30th, 2021. We did release an unmodified, which is referred to as a clean opinion. In other words, we feel that the numbers within those financial statements do fairly represent the district's position and the activity for the year then ended. We had no reportable findings, no significant deficiencies, and no material weaknesses. In the previous year, you did have one finding related to fund balance levels greater than 4% that has been remedied for this fiscal audit. So again, no findings within there. Also within this financial statement package, there are two other opinions. One is referred to as the yellow book opinion or the gas opinion. Basically what that says is that we looked at internal controls and nothing came to our attention that would warrant to be communicated to the board as a significant deficiency or material weakness. There's also a final opinion that we provide, which is related to the federal award program. We did test the school lunch fund and the CARES Act funding and found no issues with any sort of compliance areas there. So a clean bill of health with that as well. We did issue a management letter that included some new reporting requirements down the pipeline. That's an improvement from the previous year as well. Last year, there were some items in the year ended 2020. There were some items related to extra classroom, capital assets, and the special aid fund. Those have all been remedied during the current fiscal year and have been removed from the management letter for this year. The auditor communication letters was also provided to the district board, summarizes the key changes in the audit from one year to the next in the financial statement presentation. Just to summarize, all of that information is included in note 1 to the financial statements, but there is one significant difference within this financial statement, and that is on page 14 of the financial statements and page 16 of the financial statements. There is a new fund that is reported. And that fund is referred to as the Student Activities Fund. Previously, that was included as an agency account of your extra classroom activities, all your extracurriculars. The Government Accounting Standards Board issued a statement, and then the Office of the State Controller opined on that statement and requested that all school districts report this now as a special revenue fund. So now you're compliant with that, as well as all the other districts within the state that are choosing to follow those guidelines. The last bullet is the actual extra classroom report. We do issue a standalone cash financial statements for the activity of those funds. Just briefly looking at the finances, and again, this is for the year ended June 30th. But as you can see, the gap between the higher line and the lower line, it grew a little bit from 1920 to 2021. In 2020, you saw fund balance increase by about 600,000. This past year, it increased by 1.6 million. That a couple of things laid into that, really not so much on the revenue side. Revenues performed very close to budget. There was a little bit of a hit to state aid, which was kind of expected when we were going through the COVID pandemic. However, that was more than offset by the CARES Act money that came in to help facilitate some new technology and some support as far as personnel costs within the district. On the expense side of things, there were some significant savings there. You had about $1.3 million of savings with the regular school instructional costs. A lot of that was related to COVID. There's less extracurriculars, less after-school activities, less substitute teaching. So there was some positive effects to the finances as far as a lot lesser activities being done within the district for the year. When we compare it year to year, your revenues did increase by about 1.2 million, and a bulk of that is that extra $1 million of CARES Act. So while a state aid didn't meet expectations that were outlined in the budget, they did stay pretty consistent from year to year. So the expectation or the actual revenues did increase by $1 million and 200,000, largely from that CARES money that came in. On the expense side, very stable year on expenses. I think those instructional costs that were reduced helped to offset some regular step increases and salary increases that the district would have experienced. So we saw revenues, or excuse me, expenses increase from 40.5 million to 40.7 million. So as I said, the total fund balance increased from 11.9 million to 13.5 million. If you could, yeah, there you go. Thank you. As you can see, that's the kind of the chart of the growth of the fund balance. All of that fund balance plus a little extra actually shifted to the reserves to fund future costs for the district. Most of it was used to establish a insurance reserve, which can be used for items that you cannot buy commercial insurance for. The district did put together some intent to use that for computer peripherals and those sort of things that you can't buy commercial insurance through your third-party vendor. So that increased by about $1.4 million. Additionally, capital projects restriction increased by about 500,000. The remaining amount that's available for the districts is either considered assigned or unassigned. It would be assigned if it's an encumbrance, which would be a carryover of the 2021 budget that's going to be used in this current fiscal year that we're living right now. There's about 290,000 in that. And then there was about $600,000 that is going to be used as an appropriated fund balance in the budgeting back in spring. So what that leaves is on the final slide of numbers here is $1.7 million of unassigned fund balance. Your limit under the real property tax law 1318 is $1,747,366. You can see you're just under that limit and right at that 4%, thereby being in compliance. As you can see, last year was at 5.9, but the district quickly got that back under the 4% rule, so the significant deficiency was removed. Some other funds, last year, the special aid fund had a deficit of $29,000 that was remedied during the fiscal year through the board resolution. So that's been fixed. That was part of our management letter in last year. There's the new student activities fund that has a fund balance of $90,000 within it to be used for student extracurriculars. School lunch fund had a favorable year. Many districts did, just from the way the federal aid shook out and not providing as many school lunches. Your district ended the year with $361,000 in that fund. The capital project fund is at a slight deficit. That's just because money is going to be taken out for a bond. It's in a band position right now. A little bit less activity, about $3 million less activity in the 2021 fiscal year than 2020, but still $1.3 million worth of projects going on in that. That was about as quick as I could go. So if
Good
you have
job,
any
man.
questions, I'd be happy to handle them now. If not, my information's listed here as well as the manager who couldn't be with us tonight, Corey Stevenson. She's also available. So please do reach out to our firm, or if you have questions right now, I could address them now.
Does anybody?
I'll let you keep moving. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Luke. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to look for a motion to accept the audit.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion?
Thank you to Jenny for helping us.
Yes, yeah, very nice job on that.
It was very clean. It was beautiful. Thank you. Good work. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, now we're going to go to Aaron Wolf, who's going to give us a brief summary of what the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Work Group is working on.
All right, thank you. So what's coming around for the board is two documents that I wanted to speak on. And so the first document that is coming around is a policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which was released by the Board of Regents May of 2021. So I'll talk briefly about that document. The second document is a document that was also released by the Board of Regents as kind of a guidance document on how to address culturally responsive classrooms. And so that's the second document that's coming around to the board. So I also wanted to just note that I'll update the board a little bit on the DEI work group and the work that the DEI work group has been engaged in. So the first thing I wanted to say is that there's the policy on diversity, equity, and inclusion document from the Board of Regents provides kind of some framework and guidelines for school districts to consider as they tackle diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to read a few statements from that document just as a way of kind of unpacking this, I believe it's a 7-page document that the Board of Regents released. The first part I want to draw attention to is that the Board of Regents recognizes that the decision to adopt a DEI policy, as well as the contents of such a policy, are ultimately matters of local discretion. However, the Regents believe strongly that there is a moral and an economic imperative to remove the inequities that stand in the way of success for whole segments of New York's student population. That was one piece from the first page of this policy document that I thought was just an interesting thing for districts to hear, understand, and consider as they are talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. The second statement that I wanted to pull out of this document was in the following paragraph. It states all students must feel they are welcome, that they belong, and that they are supported in every school, which is really I think the thrust of diversity, equity, and inclusion is that students are feeling involved, that they feel that they belong, that they feel welcome. And then there are some key points that I wanted to just kind of touch on in this document. And the first one is governance, which is, it states the Board of Regents says establish a district diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. So this was released in May 2021. And the work on this committee actually in Olean City Schools began just slightly before that. And actually some of the work on the second document, the culturally responsive document that I sent around, we engaged with Dr. Javon Hunter from University of Buffalo right before COVID hit. I believe it was in March of 2020. There was some PD work that had begun with Dr. Javon Hunter, who actually was able to come back and be with us just recently in one of our staff days. And so we had begun that work with culturally responsive classrooms with Dr. Hunter. COVID hit, and then that kind of had certainly slowed the work down, and we've re-engaged with Dr. Hunter at this point. So I just wanted to give a kind of a quick overview of that piece. And the culturally responsive piece is a document that we haven't really gotten into this deeply inside the DEI work group yet. And I know I say DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, inclusivity. This document will be the subject of moving forward of the work of the DEI work group, and we're going to be establishing some review of that. To date, what we've done on the DEI group is we've kind of established the group. At this point in time, it's 15 members, but we're looking to kind of expand that membership so that it is more diverse than it is at this point in time. Also, we have kind of created some group norms as a group and how we'll work with one another. And we spent a lot of time in our last meeting discussing a social media policy. And so we put together some recommendations for the Board of Operations. Those were discussed yesterday in operations and will be continued to be discussed moving forward in the next operations meeting. That's quick. I don't know if there are questions. And if there's other information that you would like me to try to discuss, I'd be happy to. Yes, Jenny. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jeannie.
Oh, I just wanted to know whether, are you suggesting or recommending that we look to adopt a district-wide DEI policy? I mean, is that one of the things that's recommended here?
A lot of districts right now are discussing this matter. So I think that it will become a part of the discussion in the DEI work group. And I think a lot of districts are trying to decide where they're going to go with that. What we have heard, and we thought it was going to be released today, but I think it's going to be released tomorrow, is that the New York State Council of School Superintendents, the New York State School Boards Association, I think the Council for Rural Schools, and one other group is planning to release a statement tomorrow around diversity, equity, and inclusion. We thought it might come out today, but it looks like it's coming out tomorrow. So we will bring that to the work group as well and certainly share it with the board.
As far as the work group goes, are board members allowed on that group?
Say it again, Julio.
Are board members allowed to participate in that group?
I think we're open to expanding that group to include board members. We just didn't know what the board wanted to do. At this point in time, we had a brief discussion about it. So it certainly is something that, you know, if the board is wanting that to happen, we can certainly, I don't see why we couldn't. Thank you.
Nice.
Thanks, Aaron. Don't go far, though. Okay. All right, so next up on our agenda is the tabs committee, and Kelly is not here, so I was hoping that if somebody else, if Julio, maybe if you.
So at the tabs committee, one of our main focuses for that last meeting was diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we wanted to know what the DEI committee was actually doing, which they just presented to us. We were waiting to hear back from that. We tossed around the possibility of possibly making it a board committee. That would have to go through the board, obviously, and having 2 representatives on there. We talked about bridging the gap between the teachers and the board and administration, and seeing what we can do to better the school. And that's basically what happened and took place at the meeting.
Thanks, Julio. Any questions for Julio or anybody else that was at the tabs committee? All right, we'll go ahead and move on. The Olean City School District Foundation has a message for us. Oh, Dave's here. Okay.
Good evening. I'm delivering this message on behalf of the Olean Schools Foundation. The Olean Schools Foundation Board provides funding for new and innovative ideas, which benefit students of the Olean School District. Additionally, they recognize the recipients of the Olean School Wall of Honor located on the first floor of the hallway. Our volunteer board of directors is a group of dedicated community members, Olean School employees, parents, and alumni who believe in the mission of the foundation. Despite the challenges with education and COVID-19 and our inability to host our annual events, we are proud to share that monthly, our board convenes in a common goal to move towards approving grants. In the past 2 years, we have granted funds to our district teachers just shy of $41,000. A few of the major efforts included the book vending machines at Eastview and Washington West. These machines placed in our elementary are used as a reward system so students can own their own book and promote the love of reading in our children. Authors Everywhere grant, which allows students to publish their work. Outdoor play grants, Letters Alive, sensory learning, and learning through play, which were ideas brought to us by our teachers that can make school enjoyable and promote the love of learning. 3D printers and makerspace items that promote and creative side of our Olean middle school students, and have supported a new leader lounge at Eastview that fits in the district goal of Leader in Me district in teaching the 7 habits of effective kids. We also supported the banners recognizing the graduation senior classes on Union Street in Olean, which have been enjoyed by the entire community. The month of graduation. Music education was also supported through a grant to purchase ukuleles for our students and software to support our marching band. Please look for the new wrap on the Olean Husky van used for various opportunities from transporting athletes to sexual competitions to circulating books to our elementary schools. We're very proud to display our logo on the back. Schools Foundation is growing. We look forward to granting more requests from our teachers, which helps enhance the experience in their classrooms. Also, please note, nominations for the Wall of Honor can be accepted through December 31st for consideration in 2022, and we'll look forward to hosting an in-person induction ceremony in June. On behalf of the entire Board of Directors and Melissa DeRose, our chairperson for the Caragas Gives, November 30th, we're hopeful to have 100% participation from the Board of Education, faculty, and staff during this 24-hour online campaign. We continue to emphasize that every gift counts. This campaign has helped us raise nearly $20,000 for the last 4 years. Olean Student Activities Council proudly participates the day, which is a great opportunity for Olean students to witness the amazing support from our community. Please consider supporting us at any level again this year. Your gifts directly impact our students, and we're all about our students. The online donation platform for November 30th will be provided on our webpage at oleanschoolsfoundation.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. The district can't thank you guys enough for that work and those grants and donations. All right, now we're coming to the public comment section of our agenda. There is a message that came from the New York State School Board Association that I'm going to go ahead and read of some suggested language for board presidents to read before a public comment session. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of our meeting. Although state law does not require us to hold a public comment period, we have chosen to do so because we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, please do not expect the board to respond to your concerns and questions tonight. This is because we take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Additionally, we recognize that right now, our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period, if you so choose. The board will now entertain public comments for 30 minutes. Each individual speaker is allotted 3 minutes. The individual time limits will be enforced so that each person who has signed up to speak may be allowed to do so. All right, as a note, I should ask the board to vote to extend, because we have so many people signed up, to extend the time from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, which is our normal policy.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, with that, we will ask Michelle Asarino is the first name on my list. Okay. Ben Anderson.
Remove this.
Yep. Yep.
Good. Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Anderson. I'm a fairly new Olean homeowner and a concerned parent. I'm here today to attempt to share concerns which should warrant a long and open dialogue, but will be presented here today in 3 minutes. We are not always going to agree. We all come from different backgrounds, have different beliefs, and live different lifestyles. But this is America, where we can choose to live our lives and raise our children the best way we know how. For me, that's by the word of God. I can't understand why it has become so common for people to respond to those they disagree with by doxing them, by dragging them through the mud, by trying to get them and their families removed from the workplace after they've sacrificed so much for their school and their community. I fully expect to be the next person slandered by my fellow neighbors, but I will not be ashamed trying to live my life according to the gospel. I think it is important to note that while I do not understand or agree with the lifestyles others choose to live, I know that I am not the judge. I am not to judge, and I am definitely not worthy of casting any stones. I sincerely love all of my neighbors. While we are free to live our own lives and have our own beliefs, we need to recognize the difference of what we do in our personal lives and what takes place within the walls of this building, within Olean public school system. I think we can all agree together that we all want the best for our children, and all students have the right to learn in a safe environment. In fact, this is stated in the Olean City School District Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct also states that the school will adhere to Dignity for All Students Act, which states no student shall be subjected to harassment by employees or students on school property or at school functions, nor shall any student be subjected to discrimination based on a person's actual or perceived race, color, weight, national origin, ethnic group, religion, religious practice, disability, sexual orientation, gender, and sex by school employees or students on school property or at school functions. I'm not certain what had happened to be inclusive and being tolerant, but it seems to have become inclusive for some, tolerant of some, but while others can be slandered for not being woke enough. With that being said, we need to be real cognizant what we have different beliefs when it comes to sex and gender. However, those lessons are not the responsibility of the school. Teach our children, especially our younger kids in elementary school. It is not the school's duty to stand with one way or stand with the other.
You got about 10 seconds.
Those lessons are the responsibility of parents and guardians. With that being said, I want to extend an invitation to anyone and everyone to have these conversations, because we are all neighbors. We are all members of the community, and that's what neighbors should do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. President, would you please remind everybody that a mask is required?
Yep.
At all?
Just remember, we're in schools. We're in a school in New York State, so please have your mask on and worn appropriately over the nose. Thank you. All right, next on our list was Shayna Chudy, but I think we're gonna skip that one too. Lee Filbert.
Andrew, do you want me to do the time?
Yeah, you can. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lee Filbert, Olean resident and concerned citizen. Let me begin by candidly laying out the material facts of the matter which have compelled my words today. An employee of this school district stands before the court of public opinion for the crime of uttering aloud the doctrinal teachings, moral tenets, and ethical prescriptions of his faith. This act was undertaken in his capacity as a pastor and occurred at his regular place of worship. As a consequence of the outrage caused by this articulation of his faith at his place of worship in his capacity as a pastor, he has been placed on leave and his suitability for employment at a public school placed under question. I should like to take the time to illustrate the patent absurdity of this, as the whole of this outrage is no more than an artificial product of the concerted efforts of a few ideologically driven radicals whose ideals and styles are not reflective of the sentiments and concerns of the Olean community which this district serves. Furthermore, such actions as those taken against this individual set a dangerous precedent, as the views expressed by this man in his place of worship in his capacity as a pastor are perennial and orthodox teachings of his faith. On the first count, I am sure it's not gone without notice that the outraged voices are always the same. Those who cry foul are always ever the same, whether it be here at a school board meeting or a city council. Perhaps it is not that the community of Olean is outraged, but simply that some small faction wishes to have by dint of volume and persistence its own way, that is to say, by mob tactic. On the second count, if indeed the expression or even simply the conviction of perennial religious beliefs is sufficient to call into question an employee's suitability such that he can be placed on leave for them, then there is a tacit admission that those who hold such beliefs would be better off not holding them or speaking of them, and at the very least, they should be ashamed of them. A Christian holds the 2,000-year-old teachings on abortion and homosexuality. They believe that government is permitted by God, that Christ is necessary for salvation. Call the New York Times. There can be no shock, any shock or outrage at this, unless it is feigned or a product of ignorance. In sum, the proceedings with regard to this individual have served to do nothing more than to call into question the suitability of those who hold to orthodox Christian teachings, that whether or not they could be employed in a public capacity by Olean Central School District. William Shakespeare wrote, "A rose banner of their name would smell as sweet." He was right. In the same way, regardless what verbiage is employed by those that crime this individual's continued employment, the material facts of the matter are incontrovertible. They excoriate him because he dared to say aloud what 2,000 years of a religious tradition have taught him. Should he be removed, moved, or otherwise shuffled aside because of this, it is a clear message to all other employees of faith, whether you be a Christian, Muslim, Jew, or otherwise, that the First Amendment does not apply or protect you when people are outraged. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Filbert. Next up, we have Mr. Gary Harvey. Dr. Gary Harvey.
Those of you on the board that showed up, I appreciate your time, considering that it's a privilege for me to be able to speak to you. And that you don't get paid well enough, that we take the time to, and I love the statement that was read, that the concerns would be addressed and discussed at the following board meetings. I'm not sure when that happens, but it's pretty interesting, considering you have a week to vet and prepare for our topics beforehand. So first and foremost, I want to thank our teachers for doing what they do and having more of a spine than what our board seems to have. Our teachers are continuing to push and continuing to fight and continuing to do what they need to do to make sure the most precious resource of our community is taken care of. I really wish you would step up to the plate as well. Furthermore, in reference to any type of diversity, and some of the previous comments, unfortunately, are mired by dogmatic tradition and a lack of understanding. But A student shouldn't have to worry about what the thought process is because he has to receive free lunches at school. Especially if you really look at a faith base that's centered around a lot of socialist proceedings and activities. But regardless of what that is, I myself grew up on school lunches. If I didn't have them, I would have gone hungry. But now our kids live in an era where they have to feel bad about that because it's a liberal agenda to keep them lazy and cause problems. We can't continue to claim to be diverse and that we want to be inclusive when we're fighting about whether or not to include people. The sheer argument is ignorant. When I was in art class as a kid, I didn't get 15 red crayons. I didn't get 15 of the same paintbrushes. There was a diverse pool that was available to me in everything that we do. And both sides of the spectrum screaming that, oh, we're taking this right away and we're not honoring this and we're not honoring that. Well, I'm going to have to ask that you pull your head out of your fourth point of contact and pay attention to the children. Because it's our kids that don't feel safe. We have grown men and women throwing temper tantrums at our school board meetings because they're not getting their way. We have to have police officers at the school board meeting because a pastor doesn't know how to act. Not because of our teachers, not because of the concerned citizens, but because of individuals that are supposed to be leaders in the community. I look forward to discussing this next week.
Thank you, Dr. Harvey. Next up, we have Bruce Myers.
I'm Bruce Myers, a concerned lifelong resident of Olean. There are many false narratives being thrown around, but in the interest of time, I'll share one.
There you go.
In the interest of time, I'll share one story. I attended a board meeting on September 21st. I witnessed a group of activists who stood and turned their backs on Pastor Sean Obergfeld as he spoke. Then proceeded with a countdown during the end of his 3 minutes, not allowing him to finish. I also witnessed the opposing group do the same in retaliation. I was there when this group left and congregated outside around the fountain. In like manner, a handful of people also congregated on the steps to discuss the events of the meeting. The next day, I watched a video put up on social media that troubled me on many levels. In the video, the disrespect for Pastor Sean was not aired. Neither was the countdown that was started as he spoke. When someone posted the meeting in its entirety, it was taken down. It was stated that our group, which were essentially 8 of us, followed them out of the building, proceeded to harass them with hate speech. In a photo taken on the steps outside, 2 younger women's faces were circled with a red marker. A member of this group was publicly broadcasting these photos in solicitation, like a bounty hunter, for their names and information so they could be, quote, held accountable for their actions, end of quote. Viewers also were invited to send in videos of their alleged crime. I want to say that no one was followed out of the building. They simply sat nearer to the exit doors and naturally walked out first. There was harassment, but it was a mother and her daughter who yelled at us about her life experience while draping her pride flag on our heads and blaring music from her phone. I was bewildered, listening for a connection between what was being said and myself, or any one of us for that matter, as clearly none of us had anything to do with what she was saying. In conclusion, members of their group were the aggressors in harassing, not in being harassed. No videos ever surfaced of this alleged event because their version never happened. I'm astounded that this type of dishonest, disingenuous, deliberate propaganda is being spewed about right here in Olean. I hope that this board is able to discern the difference between the
10
character of
seconds.
this person and their agenda. The character of a person who holds a perfect record of honesty and integrity after 20 years of service as principal of the Olean School City District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Next up, we have Timothy Sherlock.
Hello again. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. As was clearly noted, it is a privilege given to us. So thank you for that. I should probably be more humble than I am at that privilege as a taxpayer to come before you and say, I have a concern. So thank you for that. And thank you, New York State. Going forward, so what we have here, again, as every week, let me outline that the discussion we're having is not about religion. The discussion we're having is not about freedom of speech. The discussion we're having is not about any type of that rhetoric. What we're talking about is what we're here to protect and what we're here to serve, and that's our students, our children, okay? When a child comes to me or anybody and says, I don't feel safe, these words are being said about me, and they're hate-filled words. They're derogatory words. Then we must do something. And when those words come from an administrator, I don't really care when it's said. All words, all actions have consequences. I teach my son this. We have freedom of speech, but we are not free from the consequences of our speech. You can believe what you want to believe. If your religion says I can be a bigot, then be a bigot. If your religion says I can hate black people, hate black people. I don't care. What I do care is when it is to the detriment of my child or another child. For 10 weeks, we have come here and asked for your help. For over 3 years, you were given the information to provide that help and did not act. Unacceptable. You are not appointed in your seats, you are voted to your seats. And that vote, that honor that you have can be quickly taken away. You have a moral obligation to correct the policy when it is flawed, a moral obligation to uphold the mission statement of this district. That is your requirement. If you can't do it, then do us the favor and leave now. Support your teachers, protect your students. If you cannot hear that cry, then leave and allow someone else on there who will change the system. Because our system is working. It works perfectly to keep those in power protected and those who are oppressed down. It's what it does. So if you don't want to stand up, if you don't want to make the commitment to make the change,
10 seconds.
then leave. Many of you are teachers too, so shame on you.
Thank you, Mr. Sherlock. All right, let's not yell out. Let's move on to the next person, I believe is Alan Yates. Thank you. Please, hey,
All right.
yep. We're gonna ask you, sir, we're gonna ask you to leave that use the profanity. Thank you.
I am as well concerned.
Hold on here a second, Mr. Yates. Thank you. We're going to ask you nicely to leave, please. If you can't keep it civil, we'd like you to leave. Please put your masks on and make sure they're on, covering your nose. I don't want to have to ask again. This person right here. Thank you. Just give me a second. Mr. Yates, you have the floor.
I am also concerned that the religious liberty and job security of Christian people working in our city schools and of our Christian students is being unduly threatened. Our schools once welcomed Christian thought more readily. I was a student at Portville Central. We had religious release time each week. We observed a daily moment of silence after the pledge and included spiritual songs. We've drifted from thinking like that of Governor Morris of Pennsylvania, a delegate to the Constitutional Convention. He said religion is the only solid basis of good morals. Therefore, education should teach the precepts of religion and the duties of man toward God. Instead, we have a climate where religious expression is unwelcome and sometimes vilified. Orthodox Christian doctrines held for millennia are being challenged, belittled, and even discarded. Some are determined to silence the voices of those who still hold to them. We've gone from a place of coexistence to coercion, and you either surrender and agree or be canceled. Online church services being much more visible have fostered greater scrutiny. Local pastors have faced public opposition for their preaching. Displeasure for the message does not nullify the constitutional right of all U.S. citizens to worship freely. No one is being forced to view any online service. We're free to participate or not. All citizens are guaranteed the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, including participation in the public square, holding office, and working for taxpayer-funded entities like schools. I've worked in many places in Olean. I've always professed faith in Christ. I believe the Bible is the inspired, inerrant word of God. I never left my faith at the door, but I served my neighbors and everyone equally, knowing that their ideals could vastly differ from mine. Without exception, the Christians employed by the Olean City School District have shown that same professionalism, and they've served us well. President Grover Cleveland once said, "All must admit that the reception of the teachings of Christ result in the purest patriotism, scrupulous fidelity to public trust, and the best type of citizenship." Will those once valued citizens now be disqualified because others dislike their theology? Should school employees be judged by their worship services or by their conduct in the workplace? If one person is discharged, who will be next and for what reason? Will employees be terminated for their church constitutions? Will we read their doctrinal statements and creeds, or just the messages that have been uttered aloud by the pastor? Resist this trend of cancel culture. Please consider the gravity of your decisions that you'll make. They'll affect the lives of many people of faith. Thank you to the board for your service. Thank you to the teachers for your hard work. Thank you for your consideration and giving me this time.
Thank you, Mr. Yates. Our final speaker is Leo Walters Tahara.
Hello. 3 years ago, we asked our school board to protect our students. The respect our teachers concern hadn't been raised yet. It was coming. 3 years ago, we asked that the school board would shield the students of Olean from harmful speech coming at them in public forums by a school administrator. 3 years ago, there was no action taken. I have to ask at this moment, what and who are we defending? Because so far, many of the conversations that have happened tonight have not centered on the students. But I'd like to ask what happens to our Muslim students who are actively have their hijabs pulled off, who are actively told to get out of town, called all sorts of names under the book. What are we doing for our Muslim students? Because from where I stand, as a white Christian, I have some of the most privilege that you can have in the whole world. And today I choose to levy that for our students who have different faith backgrounds. When an administrator stands up and says, "You are evil, you are outside of the government of God," I ask you to seriously consider how a student can learn words from the lips of that same person who told them that they were evil and outside of the government of God. I have to ask, who and what are we defending in this moment? Aaron Wolf brought up a great point a few minutes ago, and that was that all students are to be welcome, supported, and belong. There is no long-standing assault on American Christianity, but there is an assault on people of other faith traditions. That is what we are dealing with. I too live my life according to the gospel as a Christian pastor and as someone who has equal stake and claim to the same scriptures. And where that leads me to is to believe that if we really are to enact the Dignity for All Students Act, then we must consider our Muslim students. We must consider our students who fall in the margins. When you're a pastor, your speech becomes public and you're held to a more accountable level. It's the same thing when you're a principal. These things overlap and they have ramifications. You have every right to believe what you want to believe. But the question in hand is not religious freedoms. The question at hand is not freedom of speech. The question at hand is, can we create a truly safe and welcoming environment for all the Huskies? Also, Mr. Kai, I would like to apologize for you. At our last board meeting, I thought that you were the person who had quieted another person down. I went back and looked at the video and it was a voice of another person. So I'd like to apologize to you publicly for saying that. I was misinformed in the moment. I would urge you as the Olean City School Board and the Olean City School District, where all of the Huskies pull the sled, to please consider protecting our students and respecting our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. Please know that we take all your concerns that are brought to us under advisement, and we are working through things as best we can. Now we're going to move on to committee reports. Our first one is buildings and grounds. Jim, I believe you have that.
Yes, I do. Okay, we met October 19th, 5:30. First, we discussed our capital project update with Mr. Moore, Jenny Balata, and Mark Huselstein. We had 4 boring samples that were taken off the field. Radar tests are complete. Plans are being sent to the state finally. Turf field meeting that was a couple of weeks ago with turf vendors to discuss the options, costs, maintenance, et cetera. Once turf field is installed, the district staff will have to be trained on maintenance, upkeep, et cetera. Worker shortage may result in higher labor costs and the bids are coming in higher. So we may have to do some dancing with projects. COVID update as it pertains to building and grounds. Mr. Moore noted unvaccinated staff will be tested soon. Aaron will send out an email. Discussion has begun regarding testing refusal. Regarding Eastview parking timetable, Mr. Moore noted that Mr. Crawford reported parking along Spring Street at the school side is getting great. Eastview field needs an update. Jenny Balata reported that the field upgrades were included in the ARP funding applications and will not start process until funding is released, which is to be done by March 26, 2023. We'll work with the architects and engineers. Plan will have to be submitted to NICEAD faculties, facilities, and planning. Eastview Field will be used next year during the turf field installation at OIMS. Regarding our HVAC system, documentation, scheduling, numbers, and timetable. Mark Huselstein reported the M filters, which are being used currently and are to be changed every 3 months on a rotation basis. Maintenance staff is logging when filters are changed. Regarding the high school ramp, Mark Huselstein reported that Western Glass recommended changing how the door swings open. We checked in with our architect. Recommendations just to move the handicap switch to the right side of the ramp, which will allow for easier wheelchair clearance. Committee recommended the timer on the button be checked, make sure that the door stays open longer enough when backing up or down the ramp. Is a speed bump possible? And meeting safety protocols. The high school indoor foyer doors expand opening to 36 inches. Maintenance is exploring that option. It is currently less than 36 inches. And I discussed the safety protocols at our school board meetings, enforcing mask update when on school property, public comment, law and order, we all deal in safety, and safety does come first, especially when the state dictates that everyone needs to wear a mask on school property. Julio Fuentes discussed Board of Education meetings being available on TV for the public to view. Jenny know that there is a link on our district website to view it on YouTube, and then we adjourned at 6:08. Our next meeting will be to be determined.
Thank you, Jim. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Padlow? Seeing none. Our next committee report is the safety committee meeting. Do we have anybody from that committee here? Okay. We had the meeting minutes in our packet, so if there's anything that needs to be addressed, please pass that question along to me and I will get it to the correct people. Next up is the Audit and Finance Committee meeting, which was October 21st. Janine, do you have that?
Yep, I do. So we met on Thursday, October 21st, 4 o'clock. Anybody? Anybody hear me?
No.
No?
Closer.
Is that better?
Yep.
We first discussed cash flow, which is fine. Then we looked at cafeteria profit and loss. Cafeteria, now that we're doing, running it internally ourselves, is really doing quite well. We got a grant to replace some equipment. And we are also working with the Cornell Extension Service on this farm to table grant, which I'm really looking forward to being able to implement. We discussed the budget development calendar, which is on our agenda today, pretty much unchanged. I'm pretty sure we'll adopt that today. Jenny shared some information. Some of you may have seen information come down over the internet about the resolution of this campaign for fiscal equity versus the state of New York decision, which is supposed to fully fund the deficit in state funding for school districts over a fair time period, sort of dating back at least a decade. So the decision was very favorable to replacing some of that funding. However, the state legislature is going to have to fund it in their budget before that money materializes. So it's a step forward, but it's no guarantee that we're going to actually see that money come down into our district revenue. Jenny has met with the Olean Community Theater. As you may recall, there was an issue about the fact that they got taxed despite being a 501c3 organization because of sort of a clerical mix-up in whether or not they had the ability to challenge their assessment. So we had no choice. We had to tax them, but we're trying to look at some sort of arrangement where they can provide some services to the school and so that we can help them to recover some of that money in sort of a win-win. I think it's looking quite promising that they'll be able to deliver some things to our district that will help us, help them sort of earn back some of the tax money that we had to collect from them this year. Finally, we looked at the contract that again is on our agenda, I think, for tonight for Young and Wright, the OIMS hot water boiler, pretty standard contract that we would recommend approving. And of course, we're very proud of the clean audit this year. So I'm glad to have our auditors present. And our next meeting is November 18th at 4 o'clock.
Thank you, Janine. Any questions on that? All right, next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report, but being as Mr. Moore is out sick, we're going to move on to the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion's carried, which brings us to
New business.
new business. The budget development calendar. Looking for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Ira. Any discussion on that? Pretty standard. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We have the contract with Young and Wright for the capital outlay project.
Moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second. Oh, go ahead. Paul, you can
Paul,
have it.
you got it. Any discussion? For some hot water tank work heater. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Oh, turn the page. What happened here? Oh, okay. Yep, food service helper increase in hours.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine.
Second.
Ira.
I'm gonna give it to Ira. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have another food service helper increase in hours.
Motion.
Paul, Julio, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide increase in hours.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a tax settlement for Olean Holdings.
So moved.
Thank you, Janine. A second?
I'll second it, but I'm looking at the numbers here. That's a huge decline.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, the settlement did come up,
Ouch.
from the initial ask. Uh, So,
It's out of our control.
As
other-
I've said before, there have been one too many of these kinds of variances and tax settlements and things. It just calls into question the integrity of the process. It just hurts everyone that the assessments aren't fair and reasonable and correct or closer to correct. I feel sorry for folks who have to appeal these things as well.
Just for the record, it's $4,200,000 to a drop of $1,700,000.
No,
So
it's actually settled at 3 million. The
Oh, three,
ask was
okay, sorry.
1.7.
I apologize. Yeah, for 3, it's still a huge drop.
Audit and finance, there are numerous more of these being contested right now. Almost every single hotel in the city is contesting their assessment due to the pandemic. So if I presented on finance, there's a lot more.
Oh, boy.
A lot more.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a contract with Cattaraugus County to provide COVID testing.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
A second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a MOA with the OESPA for an HVAC specialist.
Moved.
So moved.
Second.
Mary and Jim, thank you. Any discussion? I believe this is a position created with ARP money. Mhm, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an MOA with the OESPA for additional classroom coverage.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Paul. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That brings us to the MOA with the YMCA.
So moved.
Thank you, Ira.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion on this?
Yes, I'm glad I didn't have to choose a date this time.
I mean, I'm gonna vote against it. I think I've spoken.
Well,
my piece many times.
well, we're making progress. Sort
So I think that this definitely gives everybody enough time to prepare and make the appropriate adjustments. Yes. So I agree with Janine, but
We are still waiting for a report from the YMCA
yes,
on this,
yes, we are.
the status of their grant and how the money is being used. I'm having more and more difficulty supporting this because it's come up every month.
Well, hopefully this will be the last
Yeah.
one.
Man,
Yeah.
I mean,
hopefully we've got some
I'm
resolution coming.
gonna be
Right.
challenged to support it past December 23rd without
Oh, definitely.
way more information than what we have received.
Paul, I have heard, unofficially, but from
Yeah.
key sources that now when the disbursement happens, there will be funds available to reimburse the prior expenditures. I know that's inconsistent with what we've heard before, but in the last week, 2 people have told me that. Like, informally.
That was discussed at operations, yes. There's that likelihood. They're crafting language to document that now.
Yeah, so we have that verbally, but we don't have
we
anything in
haven't
writing
seen it in writing yet.
saying that. So
Well, baby steps, I
a
guess.
lot of money.
Well,
That's all I'm gonna say.
we do need to make it clear to the where the board stands on this, and that we're funding it up to December 23rd, but they should have a resolution or a resolution to this whole problem by then, or we won't continue to fund them.
Okay.
All right, any other discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstentions? So we have 5-2, 4-2?
5-2.
Yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 4 to 5-2.
5-2.
5-2.
The margins are getting slimmer.
Jenny, do we have the tax collector's report on unpaid taxes? Okay.
I apologize for the late submission of this. Unfortunately, the way it fell this year, October 31st was actually on a Sunday, so people actually had till Monday last week. And we had to make sure that everybody who mailed their taxes on Monday, November 1st were received. And we received the last report on that earlier today. So we had to get that uploaded on top of our tax collector being out on an emergency medical leave, on top of glitches with the county system, on top of, you name it. So, at 4:30 today, those were able to finalize, and I do have.
Thank you. So I'll look for a motion on that.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Sure.
Thank you, Jim. And then we'll have to do a vote and sign, attest to our vote.
So for those of you who are newer members as well, what this is just a tally of all of the taxes that are unpaid as of today. These will then get sent back to the county. The county will then levy them onto everybody's county in town tax bill, so that the district is made whole by that. So there's 3 townships within our school. We have the town of Portville, the town of Olean, and the city of Olean. The town of Portville, we are returning $710.42, which means that's an uncollected tax bill. The city of Olean, we have $932,380.15. And the town of Olean is $112,668. So total for the district of $1,045,000. Just comparable to where it was last year. Out of
12 million.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're creeping up on 10% pretty soon.
Okay.
So how much of this unpaid money do we anticipate collecting
We will get
ultimately?
all of it.
All
Yeah,
right.
so what happens is the county makes us whole. So then if they remain uncollected for 2 years, that's where people's properties will go on the back tax
list and they will be put up for auction. So that you have to be on there for 2 years before the county proceeds with that. So the school district is made whole,
Okay,
it's the county.
That's
sits
the
on that.
first.
Got it.
Thank you to the county.
Yeah.
Yes, really.
All right, I'm going to take the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstentions? I'm sorry. Anybody opposed? All right, abstentions? All right, that's passed. We can go ahead and pass that around. We can sign it. Moving on to personnel. We have a teacher aide retirement resignation of Diane Simon with regret, deep regret. She's been with us a long time.
Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you, Ira.
Second, and thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any discussion? All those in,
Thank her for her service,
absolutely.
long service.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an upcoming retirement for a keyboard specialist, Shane Serto.
Motion.
Second.
Jim and Janine. And thank you as well to Shane. We wish her well. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a resignation as the dramatics director of Nick Patron.
So moved.
Thank you, Paul.
Second, and thank you for your dedicated years.
Thank you, Jim.
Does anyone have any idea how long Nick Patron has directed the school play?
Since Olean High School opened a long time ago.
We're having a forever moment.
1898, probably. No, he will be sorely missed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a wrestling coach resignation of Michael Connor.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion?
And he is also a long time wrestling coach.
Said like 17 years or something. Yeah, that's,
I think he goes back to my era, so it
oh,
would be a
even
little
further.
longer
Oh,
than that.
jeepers.
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Now we come to some appointments. We are appointing Lisa Kranz as the dramatics director.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Janine. Any discussion?
Wish her well.
Yeah.
Yes.
Glad to-
Absolutely.
Glad to have her. That's great.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are appointing a wrestling coach, Mr. Claire Anderson.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion?
I believe Claire Anderson was a 1980 graduate of Olean High School.
He's right. Yeah.
A sectional champion, I think multiple times, went on to be a national champion in wrestling, and formerly coached Duke as the head wrestling coach. So this is someone with a lot of credentials.
We welcome him.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Awesome.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide appointment
So
for
moved.
Melissa B. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Janine. Any discussion?
Oh, we're glad to have her too.
Yeah.
She's a great person.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide appointment for Alexa Varga.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, welcome, Alexa.
That's right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a teacher aide appointment for Abram Webster.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion? Welcome aboard. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a cleaner appointment for Keys Hund.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion?
Welcome back.
Welcome back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have a special ed teacher appointment for Katie Camp.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Ira. Any discussion?
Welcome
You're
back. You.
Welcome back. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have one more item that didn't make the original agenda, so we need to add that. I don't believe I have the language for that. I
Do we have a language?
don't think it's in this folder. Yeah, that's one. Okay, thank you.
We need
To amend the
amend
agenda.
agenda.
Yep. So I will look for a motion to amend the agenda to include this new retirement.
So moved.
Thank you, Mary.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we have a motion for action related to Joel Witcher's agreement, which includes resignation for purposes of retirement effective 11/9/21. I'm looking for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Thank you, Paul.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion?
Thank you for your years of service.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you to Mr. Witcher for his long tenure in the school, and we wish him well. Next on the agenda, we have informational items, which are listed, school board meetings, committee meetings, all that. We do have further need for executive session. I have contractual negotiations and personnel. So I'm looking for a motion to go into
So moved.
executive session. Mary and Janine, thank you. Any discussion?
Are we inviting anyone in, Andrew?
Yes, we're going to invite in Aaron Wolf and Jenny Bellata.
Thank you.
And there will not be action coming out of the meeting. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, we're moving to executive session in the boardroom. Thanks again, everybody, for coming. We appreciate your input.